Good morning, everybody. We're here after what I would think most people would call a resounding vote of confidence by the people of this city to build a new single terminal at KCI. It is something that we had been working on, discussing for 6 years in some form or fashion. Hundreds of meetings, thousands of hours, some controversy, but at the end of the day, after spending a lot of time with our voters and the people of the city and others, talking about the benefits of building the single terminal to the city, the jobs it would bring, the economic impact it would have, the doors it would open for us, both coming and going, the citizens of Kansas City did exactly what I've grown used to seeing them do, which is to grasp the issue and then support the continued momentum of this city moving forward. They've made their position crystal clear that we need to build a new single terminal for all the reasons that we've talked about. Taking ourselves off the role of being the largest city in the country without a direct flight to Europe that disadvantages our businesses. And by doing those things that are necessary to show people as soon as they step off of an airplane, they're in a unique place called Kansas City, Missouri. So everybody worked their tails off. Council worked very hard. I'll give it up again to my good friend, the city manager, who always seems to come up with a solution to a problem, whether it's this or housing or anything else. He's always got a way to find a solution. Jolie Justice worked very hard on the campaign trail. Councilman Reed worked very hard as well, and both of them worked on the selection process. And we got to the right point to do the right thing. So I don't think anybody expected the margin of victory. He probably was closest. I think you were at 65%. I was at a mere 60. But I think it's really impressive that the people of this city made their statement in such a resounding fashion. Now we have to get to the work of getting it done, and that's going to be a process. It's going to take some time, working towards the MOU and other things, but to get there so that we can open a new single terminal in the end of 2021 and get this city on the map once again. So I've said as much as I need to say, except I want to thank all the people of the city of Kansas City, Missouri, for showing faith in us, because that's what it took. They listened, we talked, they showed faith with their vote. I want to thank the people who worked so hard on it, the chambers, north and south, Platte County EDC, KCADC, all the organizations that stepped up, Cerner, Hallmark, companies that stepped up to do things extraordinary, things they had never done before in order to do what's in the best interest of this city. And the one thing that I'll say before I toss it to Troy is that regardless of any of the other stuff that floated around, every single thing that was done in this process was done with the best interest of this city in mind. And we did all of that because we knew that if we could get past this hump and get a single terminal, it would open doors for this city and opportunities that we have not yet had. And that's always going to be something that we're trying to do, is to continue to build this city for the future and for our kids and our grandchildren, because they're the ones who will be the beneficiaries of what we're doing here today. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to the citizens of Kansas City. Thanks to all of our partners who work so hard. And this once again shows what happens when you have an entire group of people, civic, community, business, elected leadership, everybody working hard to push the same rock up the hill. We got up there and we pushed it up so well that now it's going to start rolling downhill. And hopefully you guys won't be at the bottom. Troy?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I want to echo the Mayor's comments about the great reception we received from city residents. This is a tremendous validation of where I think the city is headed, and for them to overwhelmingly approve a new terminal is, I think, a statement of, that they share in the enthusiasm for the renaissance that Kansas City is enjoying. I will I want to, before I walk through the process, the next steps, and there are several next steps that we'll articulate, I just want to take a moment to recognize some tremendous folks in our aviation department, our procurement department, and our law department. They've worked thousands of hours over many years. These conversations really started back in 2009, 2010, accelerated again in 2011, but there's been a lot of great staff work trying to lay the groundwork for the vote last night. So there were folks, there was one gentleman standing back there that I think must have answered 18,000 questions, and probably 16,000 were the same questions over and over, but a tremendous amount of work on the part of the staff who were getting information out, educating the public, providing clear and concise answers, and their work needs to be appreciated. We couldn't have pulled this off without some great staff work in the law, procurement, and aviation department. So my hat's off to them. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about the next steps in the process, and that's a very simple process. What we are intending to do is introduce the memorandum of understanding between the city and Edgemoor on November 30th. The reason we're picking November 30th is we're not quite having all the I's crossed, or I's dotted and T's crossed for council tomorrow, but they are off 2 weeks, and so on November 30th is their first time back. So it's our intention to introduce a memorandum of understanding for Edgemoor to allow that public process to go. I will tell you that that process with Edgemoor has been very collaborative. All of the requirements that were put in the original ordinance approved by the council when they tentatively approved Edgemoor as the developer have been incorporated in the memorandum of understanding. And so we are now finalizing those details. That will go to the city council on November 30th. What the memorandum of understanding does is kind of set out the guiding principles that will guide all the other development agreements, financing agreements, all of those types of issues going forward. So it's important that we get that right, get everybody on the same page with the approach that we're going to take, because it will guide a number of other documents as we go forward. So again, the goal, the timeline for introduction to that at the city council is November 30th. We had started work on, Edgemoor had started some work on the environmental assessment process. We have to go through it because it's a federal project. There's some environmental requirements that we have to go through to make sure that we are doing it to meet all federal rules. That process had started. Now with last night's vote, we can accelerate that process. We have try to get all of that done within the next 6 to 9 months. Our goal is so that everything is ready so that we can break ground in the fall of 2018. As the mayor said, our goal is to deliver a new terminal to this city by the end of 2021. And we think it's an aggressive timeline, but it's doable. So lastly, as Edgemoor said, and as the city said throughout the campaign, there are ample opportunities yet for the public to weigh in on design features that they want to see incorporated into that the new terminal. Edgemoor will be conducting at least 6 open houses, design open houses, to incorporate the public's ideas about do they like the fountain? Do they want a different fountain? Do they want different amenities? How do they want play areas to represent? What sort of finishes do they want? How much glass? Those types of issues. We really want the public to take ownership of this process, so there will be at least 6 hearings in each of the council districts in November, December, and early January to get that process incorporated. And so we really want the public to involve, and we'll try to do some stuff online. What we'll try to do is talk about making sure that we keep this up to date. The city's website, the new KCI pages will be continually updated with new information as it's developed with meetings. We encourage people to do that. If residents want to receive KCI newsletters, all they have to do is go to kcmo.gov/subscribe, and they can get any and all information that's generated on the project. We will incorporate it through reports through our KC stat process, which occurs on a monthly basis to the mayor and myself, as well as the city council, and there will be routine project updates to the city's airport committee as they manage that process going forward. So I again want to stress that the work of the city will continue. We have, as you've noticed, we have the city can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we have I think about 5 or 6 general obligation bond projects out under construction already, with more to come in the next couple of weeks. And we just got a note that we have just passed 600 houses demolished in our 2-year program to eliminate over 800 dangerous buildings in the structure. So we can handle this, we're gonna do it, we've got a great team in place. But we wanted to walk you through that process that will take place over the next couple of months. And again, the goal is break ground in the fall of 2018 and open a brand new terminal by the end of 2021. So with that, before we open it up to questions from any media, I'd turn it over to Councilman Wagner, Councilman Reed, or Councilman McManus, and see if they have any comments they'd like to provide.
So a couple of things that I would like to make sure I say, and that is, one, the mayor has given a lot of credit and thanks to others, but we have to say thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership in getting us to this hurdle. As we've said many different times, this has been an age-old question in terms of what do we do with our KCI terminal airport. And the reality of it is that this conversation, which started back in the 90s, and now it is 2017, because of the leadership of the mayor, and regardless of what way you think one way or the other, and try to coin or make this conversation out to be what it is, we have been able to, as a council, work together and move this needle forward. And I think as the citizens' vote yesterday shows that we have made it over that hump. One thing that I like to point out that I think is important to point out as it relates to the numbers from last night. When we as a council voted unanimously to place this on the ballot, it was some almost 76 or 75 days ago. We saw yesterday that we worked every single day to get 1% and chip away at 1% for that vote. And we were able to accomplish that with that 76% of approval from our citizens. So just imagine if we had 100 days, we probably would have been able to have 100%.
McManus did.
Well, everybody can do what Dreamy does. But we certainly owe a debt of gratitude and thanks to, as the mayor said, our citizens of this city who believe in their city government, which we have the honor of being able to serve every single day to move our city forward. As I've said many times before, that a world-class city deserves a world-class airport, and I think that that road to a world-class airport starts today as we roll up our sleeves and get rolling forward to build this world-class airport. And the citizens, our city council, every last one of the members of this city council, and the mayor certainly deserve a debt of gratitude. And it's always important to point out that just because you might be the loudest person in the room doesn't mean that your voice is the only one that's been heard. And last night, those voices that weren't the loudest ones in the rooms, their voices were heard loud and clear, and we thank them for their votes.
Well, I might just add, this reminds me of an old story. When I was a kid, I would be asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you probably all were too. I know my kids are when they go to school. But cities are often asked that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I just take Troy's earlier comment about how you can walk and chew gum, and I would add you can do jumping jacks and you can backflips and so on. We've been asked over these past few years, what does Kansas City want to be when it grows up? And it's clear that it wants to be a city that fixes its problems when it's confronted with them. It is a city that wants to be global in nature. It wants to be a city that is not in flyover country, it is destination country. And so I'm just very grateful to the citizens of this city who see and saw the vision that we did, who came to the polls to emphatically say we agree. And now we have a little work to do, but we're darn happy to do it. So thank you all very, very much.
I'll just say that Northland got a lot of credit for turning out the vote yesterday, but as I reminded some of my colleagues, I represent part of Cass County, and they voted 100% in favor of this proposal with the one vote that came out to vote up there, but I think that's hard work. Yeah, I think what's important, the important takeaway is that this was an issue that the city united around, no matter where you live. Whether you're up north, up south, east, west, it didn't matter. People came out to support this in numbers that we didn't fully expect to see. Numbers that outstripped, I think, even GeoBond numbers. And so what that tells me is that the process and the debate and dialogue that went through that process made us stronger. It made the issue more well developed for voters to embrace. And those scars and bumps along the way, I think, brought us together in a way that we wouldn't have been together before. So, and when I say we, I don't mean just the council and elected officials in the room. Obviously, the mayor and the manager provided leadership, ongoing leadership on this issue. And the council that became engaged is a newer member of the council that became engaged, in the last 2 years. But I mean the voters themselves, that they came, I think, through this issue with us, and they came to become able to embrace it in a way because of that process. So everybody said all the thanks I think that need to be said, but I think obviously the number one thank you is to the voters of Kansas City who came out, no matter where they lived, and they came out in big numbers to support this project so we can get it going forward. And I'm very pleased and excited to hear from the management today that the process will continue to have that collaborative approach in getting the input of the voters as we move forward.
Councilman Lucas, do you want to?
Very briefly, good to be with you all today. Glad to see my colleagues again. We made a lot of promises in the run-up to this election, and now we're going to fulfill them. There were folks throughout our organized labor community who I know want to see what we come to in a final agreement, our minority community, making sure that we have the transformative project that we had promised, and so we continue that work today. I want to thank everyone, particularly our voters, who time and time again have reminded this region of how open-minded they can be. I think how they understand how progress is important for Kansas City. And then I also want to personally thank the aviation department that I think went above and beyond their duty. And I don't know if we're giving them bonuses or anything like that.
No, you can.
But did great work in informing folks of the facts in connection with this issue, and that's why you see an outcome like this one. So I just want to join my colleagues, and I know we have more work, but thanking our community, those who work for this city, and then making sure that we uphold all the promises that we have, and the work that will come forward for us. So thank you all for being here.
Happy to answer any questions.
Do you have, when, Mayor, I think, and Troy, when this goes to the council at the end of the month, do you anticipate that it will be full of details regarding the community benefits package? Will it include signed union deal, and also the MWBE numbers? Will all that be in the MOU?
Yes.
I don't know, I don't know
They'll
what
have
you
the,
mean by signing.
the principles will be there in terms
Right.
of what the participation numbers will be, the details of if there's an actual agreement between Edgemore and the labor unions. That's between them as individuals. It's not between the city and those. So they're working on it. There was meetings yesterday. There will be meetings today. So my sense is by November 30th, we'll have most of these details.
Hang on, Bill. So on the community benefits package, there'll be numbers there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also would point out, Mike, that you could probably point to the committee substitute that this council passed as a resolution that gives an outline and framework of what we are looking for as part of that memorandum of understanding.
If the holidays weren't intervening, would this MOU be in shape to go to the council now or next week? And if not, what are the loose ends? What is remaining to be worked out?
Well, I don't think that we want to get into a discussion about the negotiations that are going forward. That's a good way to have negotiations take a turn that you don't want. You don't put your business in the street. The MOU is being worked on in a very collaborative way. It is a complicated document. There's a lot of pieces already in place. And the bottom line is that when we knew that we had an election today that everybody was focused on, and when we also knew that the council was going to be off for 2 weeks, there was no great rush to have it done tomorrow or Friday when nobody's going to be here to look at it anyhow, or it's not going to get any work done. So rather than rush, we decided that we would do it right so that when it does go to council, it will be as complete of a document as possible. And that means there'll be a limited need for debate and changes, and we can move forward quickly.
Are the community benefits still being worked on?
Community benefits are already prescribed in the ordinance, and I think he said that they're already nailed down.
In very broad terms, and I know this is probably an Edgemore question, but in general, when people go to KCI in 2018, 19, 20, 21, and they're catching flights while this construction is underway, what are they going to be confronted with?
Well, everybody is going to have to stop at the entrance load up their car with a bag of cement, drive it in, put on a hard hat. So I would. You don't think so? Okay.
That's not what we agreed to.
No. All right, so not everybody. Councilman Reed won't. They're going to be confronted with an alternative route into B and C, I believe, is how that's going to work.
Actually, they should be fairly minimal. They'll notice
really.
they'll notice some disruption as they pass by Terminal A. But what the beauty of this is that we can basically run Terminal B and C without any significant disruption of service for the next 5 years, and then switch open Terminal A and turn the lights off in Terminals B and C, and without any disruption to the public. So that's the beauty, and that's why we can get more done on a quicker time frame, because it's an isolated site. So the only thing residents and visitors will see as they drive by KCI is they'll probably see some construction fencing where the entrance to Terminal A was, and that area will be gated off, closed off, and that's where the construction activity will take place. So if you're using Terminal B or Terminal C until 2021, I don't see any disruptions, and the aviation department will work hard to make sure that there are no disruptions. So we'll keep patching and repairing and replacing as needed to make sure that this terminal runs as efficiently as it's doing now, and then at the end of 2021, we'll walk into a brand new terminal. So that's the goal.
The other thing that's important to point out is that the aviation department has looked for alternative places so that many of the construction workers who are going to be out on the job site, that they will be able to park in different locations and not necessarily in the garages where passengers who are flying to and from their destinations. And so there will be a number of those locations that will exist that would also eliminate any type of interruption to the traveling public. And so as the manager there has referenced, we want to make sure we do everything that, while there may be some sort of hiccups here and there, we want to do everything we can, of course, to get it right and make this as least hectic as possible.
Is that it?
Can you, beyond the environmental approvals and the MOU, can you sketch out a little more about what's going to happen in 2018 leading up to, the first demolition, financing? Is that basically Edgemore's situation? Is there anything you guys have to do in terms of seeing the financing?
Once we get into the agreement, once we get the agreements in place, there will be discussions with Edgemore as to the term, what we want in terms of how much conduit financing, how much equity. That's driven by a lot of what's in the community benefit agreements, working those components out. But that'll kind of work through its normal process involving either a statutory agency or a private group that Edgemore may bring to the table to finance those issues. Those conversations start once the MOU is signed in terms of getting to the actual development agreement and the financing agreement. So the guiding principles will be in the MOU, and then the specific details will come back to the council in each subsequent separate agreement. But the lead time issues are starting the environmental assessment, getting the necessary approvals from the Federal Aviation Administration. That's a 6 to 9 month process in the best of cases, so we've got to make sure that we start at that as early as possible to meet that time frame for fall of 2018.
What is the city's hammer to make sure that Edgemore hits this late 2021 goal? I know in the proposal it says around November of 2021.
There will be agreements into the penalties that there are late fees. There will be penalties for days after for delivery after 2021. So we'll have significant financial hammer ability to impose on Edgemore if they miss deadlines because of their own issues. So the other component of this is we are trying, that's another reason why, to Bill's question about why we're waiting until the 30th, while we've got general agreement between the city and Edgemore on the terms of an MOU, we want to make sure our airline partners are brought into this deal, and coordinating 7 different airlines takes a little bit of time, so we want to make sure they're comfortable with everything in the MOU so that it's a tri-party partnership. So it's been that way for the last couple of months, and we want to continue that going forward. We don't anticipate any issues. We haven't heard any issues yet, but innumerably, when you get lots of lawyers looking at it from a lot of different sides, there'll be a lot of wordsmithing that goes on. I couldn't pass up the chance. But that's the plan. That's why November 30th works like that. Date will deliver it, start the conversations.
Anybody else?
How confident were you about this vote? And what do you think your biggest argument, the most convincing argument was to push it over the top?
Go ahead, Jermaine, you can take this one.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that you approach any election being confident. Last night I went into thinking when the polls closed that I was cautiously optimistic, thinking that it would be very tight, but thinking we would come out on top. Did I think that it would be a large majority and overwhelming victory as we saw last night? Honestly, no. But as I thought about it, as I reflected and prayed in my prayer and thinking this morning, I thought how great it was, as I mentioned earlier, that the citizens of this city have confidence in their elected officials and believe what they actually are hear from us, that we are here to protect their best interests and do what is best for the citizens of the city. So, I mean, that's how I feel.
Sure.
Everyone else may have a different.
Well, you either run scared or you run unopposed. And so I tend to always want to run scared because it keeps you keen and focused. I felt as we started this process of talking to voters well over a year ago, that every time I went out, there was a slight, subtle change moving more towards yes. The anecdotal evidence was clear in my mind that we reached a tipping point, and then we got to the positive side, and more people were starting to get it. I thought it would be a tighter vote, but I believed that we would win, and that faith was based on the fact that I've seen the people of Kansas City start a streetcar, never been done before, to GO bonds, the largest GO bond issuance that we ever had. The vote to take parks out of the off the general fund and set them up on their own separate tax. The renewal of the public safety sales tax, the development downtown, the things that we were doing to try to get the airport, and every single time the people of this city said, we want to move forward, we understand the cost, we're willing to pay that cost in order to move forward in a way that makes this city better. And I thought that they would do the same here, but 75% was a little bit surprising, to say the least, but very gratifying, because that meant that what we were saying to them was penetrating. And what we said to them is that this city cannot be the great city that it actually is without an airport that matches it. That's our front door. And when you walk up to the front door of a house, you want it to be something that's inviting. You want it to be something that says, welcome and come on in. And now we're going to get a chance to do that. Although our past door had served us well, the new front door is going to serve us even better going forward.
It was in this very room, was it not, in May of 2016, where you announced that you were hitting the pause button on this project. Can you talk about the emotional journey from that day to where you are now, being able to announce that 75% of voters are for the project?
I believe the polling around that time was 30-something% in favor a year ago. And the work that we've done collectively since that time moved it to a point where at least the polling lagged behind the real numbers even as of last night, quite frankly. But 30%, especially as we were talking about the GO bond election, I simply did not want to get the negative sentiment there mixed up with what we wanted to be the positive sentiment of GO bond. So taking it off the docket was painful because it was something that we had been working on for quite some time. It was painful not only for me, not only for the city, it was painful for the airlines who said that they wanted to expand here and that they really wanted a vote last August, and we did not get there. And they stuck with us, thank God they did, and said, we'll stick with you. But I remember some tough phone calls after that happened, and we asked the business community to step up, and thank God that Burns and Mac did step up, because they got the conversation started on a different path. People can say what they want to about all of that, I really don't care. But the fact of the matter is, when we sat here for a year trying to find a solution to a problem, they're the ones that brought us a solution, and that's why we're here today. Didn't work out for them, But the bottom line is that we said at the beginning, we were gonna make the decision that was in the best interest of the city. They got us to a point where that decision was even possible to be made, and I won't forget that, and I won't apologize for that either. So yeah, there's been a lot of pain, there's been a lot of stuff said, there's been a lot of accusations, there's been a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, we knew this was the right thing to do to get this airport built for this city. We stuck with it, and we're getting it done.